They say money talks, but in New York City, it screams. Damien Caldwell thought he owned the world. He was the kind of billionaire who used people like tissues and threw them away. So, when he walked into that restaurant and decided to humiliate a tired, struggling waitress named Olivia Bennett just to make his rich friends laugh, he made the biggest mistake of his life. He asked her for financial advice as a joke. He expected silence. What he got was a prediction so accurate, so terrifying and so impossible that it didn't just silence the table, it shattered his entire reality. But Olivia wasn't just a waitress. She was a ghost, hiding in plain sight. And Damien? He just woke up a sleeping dragon. The air inside l'Orangerie smelled of truffle oil, old money, and desperation. It was the kind of place where a bottle of wine cost more than a Honda Civic, and the people drinking it wouldn't notice if the city outside burned to ash, as long as the air conditioning kept humming. Olivia Bennett adjusted her apron, wincing slightly. The cheap fabric dug into her waist, irritating the scar that ran along her lower back, a souvenir from a life she had buried 3 years ago. At 28, Olivia looked 10 years older. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe, fraying bun, and she wore no makeup to hide the dark circles under her hazel eyes. She made herself small. She made herself invisible. That was the rule of survival. Do not be seen. Table 4 needs a refill on the sparkling water. The Pellegrino, not the tap. The floor manager, Henri, hissed at her as he breezed past. Henri was a petty tyrant who combed his hair to hide a bald spot and treated the staff like indentured servants. On it, Olivia murmured. She grabbed the chilled bottle and moved toward table 4. It was the power table, situated in the center of the room, specifically designed so that everyone else in the restaurant had to look at who was sitting there. Tonight, it was Damien Caldwell. Everyone in New York knew Damien Caldwell. He was 32, possessed a jawline that could cut glass, and had a net worth that hovered somewhere in the 11-figure range. He was the CEO of Caldwell Sterling Capital, a hedge fund known for aggressive takeovers and ruthless efficiency. He was currently laughing, his head thrown back, exposing a tanned throat. Sitting with him were 3 other men in bespoke suits, sycophants, and junior partners. They were celebrating something. A merger, likely. "I'm telling you, Elias," Damien said, his voice carrying effortlessly over the low hum of the restaurant. "The deal with Omnitech is bulletproof. We acquire them at dawn, strip the assets, and by lunch the stock jumps 40%. It's like printing money." Olivia approached the table, the green bottle slick with condensation in her hand. She moved to pour into Damien's crystal glass, keeping her eyes lowered. "Whoa, easy there," Damien said, holding up a hand without looking at her. He was busy checking his phone. "Don't drown the scotch." "It's water, sir," Olivia said softly. Damien finally looked up. His eyes were a piercing, icy blue, usually described in magazines as hypnotic. Right now they were just cruel. He scanned her face, taking in the tired eyes, the loose uniform, the utter lack of glamour. He smirked. "Right. Water. The elixir of life for the working class," Damien chuckled, looking at his friends for validation. They laughed on cue. Olivia finished pouring and took a step back. "Is there anything else I can get you, gentlemen?" She should have walked away. She should have just bowed her head and retreated to the kitchen to scrape leftovers into the bin. But Damien was in a mood. He was high on adrenaline and victory, and like a cat with a mouse, he wanted to play. "Actually, yes," Damien said, leaning back in his leather chair. He pulled a heavy money clip from his jacket pocket. He peeled off a crisp $100 bill, then another, fanning them out on the white tablecloth. "We're discussing the market," Damien said, his voice dripping with mock seriousness. "And since you're listening in, I'm curious. What's the view from the bottom?" The table went quiet. Elias, the man to Damien's right, snickered. "Damien, don't be mean. She probably thinks a bull market is where they sell cattle." Damien ignored him, locking eyes with Olivia. "Come on. If you had my money for 1 hour, what would you do? Buy a lottery ticket? Pay off a credit card? Give me some sage advice from the real world?" Olivia gripped the empty water bottle tighter, her heart hammered against her ribs. "Don't engage. Walk away. You are Olivia Bennett, high school dropout, nobody from nowhere." "I really should get back to my tables, sir," she said, her voice steady. "I'll tip you $1,000 right now," Damien challenged, slapping the stack of cash on the table. "Just give me one stock tip, one financial move. Make me laugh. It was the arrogance. It wasn't the money, though God knew she needed it to pay the rent on her studio apartment in Queens. It was the absolute certainty in his eyes that she was nothing. It was the same look he had given her 3 years ago, before everything fell apart. The heat rose up Olivia's neck. The mask she had worn for 3 years cracked, just a hairline fracture. She looked at the tablet sitting open on the table in front of Elias. It showed a live ticker of the Asian markets opening. She looked at Damien. "You're buying Omnitech at dawn?" she asked. Damien blinked, surprised she could even pronounce the name. "That's the plan. And you're leveraging the acquisition against the yen because the interest rates are historically low," she continued, her voice changing. The softness evaporated. The submissive waitress tone vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp cadence. The voice of a predator. Damien's smile faltered. "That's standard practice." "How do you—" "Standard practice for 2024, Olivia cut him off. "But you didn't check the regulatory filings in Singapore, did you? Omnitech's primary semiconductor supplier isn't a factory. It's a shell company owned by the sanctioned government of a blocked nation. The report drops in Tokyo in exactly 45 minutes. The silence at the table was sudden and absolute. The clinking of silverware from the other tables seemed to deafen them. Elias frowned, tapping his tablet. "What is she talking about?" Olivia didn't look at Elias. She kept her eyes on Damien. "If you buy Omnitech at dawn, the SEC freezes your assets by noon. The stock won't jump 40%. It will be delisted. You won't just lose the acquisition, Mr. Caldwell. You'll trigger a margin call on your entire portfolio. You'll be insolvent by Friday." She placed the empty water bottle on the table with a soft thud. "My advice?" Olivia said, looking down at the $1,000 on the table. "Short Omnitech. Put everything you have on the put options. Then take that $1,000 and buy yourself a drink. You're going to need it." She turned on her heel and walked away. Behind her, the table was dead silent. "Damien," Elias whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm looking at the Singapore filings right now. I think she's right. There's a flag here I missed." Damien didn't answer. He watched the waitress disappear into the kitchen, the hair on his arm standing up. It wasn't just that she knew. It was the way she said it. He had heard that tone before. Who the hell is she? The kitchen of l'Orangerie was a chaotic symphony of shouting chefs and clanging pans. But for Olivia, the noise was muffled by the pounding of her own heart. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She leaned against the stainless steel counter near the dish pit, her hands trembling. She had broken cover. For 3 years she had been a ghost. She had scrubbed toilets, waited tables and walked dogs, all to ensure that the name Serafina Vance remained buried in the grave of public opinion. If anyone found out that Olivia Bennett was actually Serafina Vance, the former girl wonder of Wall Street, the prodigy accused of embezzling $50 million from her own pension fund. She wouldn't just lose her job. She might lose her freedom. She had never stolen that money. She had been framed by the only man she ever trusted, but proving it had been impossible. "Olivia! Table 7 wants the check," Henry shouted, snapping his fingers in her face. "I'm going," she snapped back, sharper than usual. Henry recoiled, blinking. Out in the dining room, chaos was brewing. Damien Caldwell was no longer laughing. He was standing up, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders. "Wake them up! I don't care what time it is in London," Damien roared, ignoring the stares of the other diners. "Dump the Omnitech position, all of it, now, and get me everything we can on the short side. Leverage the house if you have to." "Damien, are you insane?" Elias hissed, tugging at his sleeve. "You're making a multi-million-dollar pivot based on the word of a waitress?" Damien covered the receiver. His eyes were wild, darting toward the kitchen door. "Check the Tokyo ticker, Elias." Elias looked down at his iPad. His face went ashen white. "Oh my God, the report just dropped. Omnitech is halting trading. The supplier, it's a fraud. The stock is in free fall in the pre-market." If they had held their position, Caldwell Sterling Capital would have lost $400 million in 10 minutes. Damien slowly lowered the phone. He had just made $20 million in 5 minutes by shorting the stock, but he didn't care about the money. He felt a cold sweat trickling down his back. That waitress had saved him. "Where is she?" Damien demanded. He marched toward the kitchen, ignoring the protests of the maître d'. He pushed through the swinging double doors, stepping into the humid, noisy world of the back of house. The kitchen staff froze. A billionaire in a $5,000 suit standing next to the grease trap was not a common sight. "The waitress," Damien said, his voice commanding. "The one with the dark hair. Olivia. Where is she?" Henry, the manager, scurried forward, wringing his hands. "Mr. Caldwell, I am so sorry if she was rude. She is a temp, very unreliable. I can fire her immediately if you fire her, I will buy this building and evict you," Damien growled. "Where did she go?" Henry pointed a shaking finger toward the back exit. She clocked out. She said she felt sick. She left 2 minutes ago." Damien turned and ran. He burst out of the rear service door into the alleyway. It was raining now, a cold, miserable New York drizzle. The alley was filled with dumpsters and wet cardboard. At the far end of the alley, he saw a silhouette turning the corner onto the main street. "Hey!" Damien shouted, sprinting after her. "Wait!" Olivia heard him. She didn't stop. She walked faster, pulling her thin coat tighter around her shoulders. She couldn't be seen with him. If the press saw Damien Caldwell chasing a waitress, they would dig. And if they dug, they would find the truth. She reached the corner, hoping to vanish into the subway entrance, but a black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb, Damien's security detail. The door opened, blocking her path. She spun around. Damien was there, chest heaving, rain darkening the shoulders of his suit. He stopped 5 feet from her. "Who are you?" Damien asked, breathless. "I'm late for the train," Olivia said, keeping her head down. "Please let me go." "You just saved my company," Damien said, stepping closer. "You analyzed a complex international merger in 10 seconds based on a glimpse of a screen. You knew about the Singapore regulatory filing. That's not something you pick up reading the Wall Street Journal." "I guessed," Olivia lied. "You didn't guess." Damien reached out, catching her wrist. It was a reflex. Olivia flinched violently, pulling her arm back. For a second, her coat sleeve rode up, revealing a small, faint tattoo on the inside of her wrist. A chess piece. A queen. Damien froze. He stared at the tattoo. He recognized it. Years ago, before the scandal, Before the world decided Serafina Vance was a villain, that symbol had been on the cover of Forbes. He looked up at her face, really looking this time. He mentally removed the tired expression, the lack of makeup, the harsh hairstyle. "My God," Damien whispered, the rain dripping from his hair. "You're her. You're Serafina Vance." Olivia's eyes went wide with panic. The game was up. "You're mistaken," she hissed. "Serafina Vance is gone. My name is Olivia." "You disappeared," Damien said, his voice filled with awe and confusion. 3 years ago, $50 million missing. Everyone said you were in Brazil, or dead. But you've been serving coffee?" "I didn't take the money," Olivia said, her voice shaking with a suppressed rage she had held for years. "And if you say my name out loud again, I swear to God I will disappear for real this time." Damien held up his hands in surrender. Okay. I believe you." "You shouldn't," she snapped. "Nobody else did." She turned to walk away, but Damien stepped in front of her again. This time he wasn't aggressive. He looked desperate. "Wait," he said. "You didn't take the money. I believe that. Because a thief takes the cash and lives on a beach, they don't scrub dishes in Hell's Kitchen." "What do you want, Caldwell?" "I'm in trouble," Damien admitted. It was the first time he had said those words to anyone in a decade. "The Omnitech deal. It was a trap. Someone set me up to buy it. Someone wanted me to go bankrupt today." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Sterling," she said. Damien blinked. "Richard Sterling, my own partner." "He was the one pushing the deal, wasn't he?" Olivia asked. "He was the one who told you the Singapore files were clean." Damien's face darkened. "Yes." "Richard Sterling is the man who framed me," Olivia said, the rain mingling with the tears she refused to shed. "He destroyed my life to cover his own debts, and now he's trying to do the same to you." Damien looked at this woman, this waitress in a wet coat, who possessed a mind sharper than his entire board of directors combined. "Help me," Damien said. "Help me take him down. I can give you your life back. I can prove your innocence." Olivia laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "I can't go back to that world, Damien. They'll eat me alive." "Not if you're with me," Damien said intensely. "I don't need a waitress. I need a weapon. Come work for me, as a consultant, under the table. We destroy Sterling together." Olivia looked at his hand, extended toward her in the rain. It was a lifeline, or it was a trap. But she remembered the look on Richard Sterling's face the day he testified against her. She remembered the smirk. Olivia took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. She reached out and took Damien's hand. "I'm expensive," she warned. Damien smiled, and for the first time that night, it was genuine. "I can afford it." The penthouse elevator opened directly into Damien Caldwell's living room, a sprawling expanse of Italian marble and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking Central Park. It was 3:00 a.m. Olivia stepped out, still wearing her wet waitress uniform, smelling of stale fryer grease and rain. She looked around, hugging her arms to her chest. The contrast was violent. An hour ago, she was worried about making rent. Now she was standing in a room that cost more than her entire neighborhood. "The guest suite is to the right," Damien said, tossing his keys onto a glass table. He looked exhausted, the adrenaline of the alleyway fading into a grim determination. "There are clothes in the closet. My sister leaves stuff here. It should fit. Shower, sleep. We start at Euro 600. Olivia didn't move. She stared at a painting on the wall, an original Basquiat. "Why are you trusting me?" she asked quietly. "I could be lying. I could take whatever access you give me and sell it to the press." Damien walked over to the wet bar and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid. He didn't drink it. He just stared at the glass. "Because you hate Richard Sterling more than I do," Damien said, turning to face her. "And in my world, hate is a more reliable currency than loyalty. Hate doesn't depreciate." Olivia felt a chill go through her. He was right. The next morning, Olivia Bennet ceased to exist. In her place, a ghost began to take shape. She sat at the long mahogany table in Damien's private study, surrounded by 6 monitors. She was dressed in a sharp, charcoal pantsuit that Damien's personal shopper had rushed over at dawn. Her hair was washed and blow-dried straight, falling like a curtain of dark silk around her face. The tired waitress was gone. The girl Wonder was waking up. "Okay," Olivia said, typing furiously on a mechanical keyboard. "I'm inside the internal ledger. Sterling has been busy." Damien paced behind her, a mug of black coffee in his hand. "What do you see?" "He didn't just set you up with Omnitech," Olivia muttered, her eyes darting across lines of code and transaction logs. "That was just the finisher. He's been bleeding the company dry for 18 months. Look at this." She pointed to a series of transactions on the 3rd monitor. "Shell companies," Damien noted, frowning. "Consulting fees?" "Consulting fees paid to firms that don't exist," Olivia corrected. "He's funneling capital out of the operational budget and parking it in offshore accounts in the Caymans. But he's clever. He's tagging the withdrawals with your digital signature." Damien froze. The coffee mug rattled slightly in his hand. "He's framing me." "Just like he framed me," Olivia said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He's building a narrative. When the company crashes, which it will because the liquidity is gone, the SEC will look at the logs. They'll see Damien Caldwell authorizing massive transfers to personal accounts right before the collapse. You won't just go bankrupt, Damien. You'll go to federal prison for 20 years. Damien slammed his fist onto the desk. "I trusted him. He was my father's best friend." "He's a sociopath," Olivia said calmly, "and we have a problem. This evidence? It's circumstantial. It's his word against the logs, and the logs say you did it. We need the source key. We need the physical ledger he keeps off-network." "He keeps everything on a private server at his estate in the Hamptons," Damien said. "It's air-gapped, unhackable from here." Olivia stopped typing. She spun her chair around to face him. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. It was the first time Damien had seen her smile, and it terrified him slightly. "Then we have to go get it," she said. "How? Break in?" "No," Olivia said. "We get invited. The Winter Solstice Gala is this Saturday, isn't it? Sterling hosts it every year." Damien scoffed. "I can't take you to that. Half the people there worked on Wall Street 3 years ago. Someone will recognize Serafina Vance." "They won't," Olivia said, standing up. She walked to the window, looking out at the city she used to rule. Because Serafina Vance was a brunette who wore glasses and oversized suits to hide her figure. She was a nerd, a calculator with legs. She turned back to him, her hazel eyes blazing. "You're going to introduce me as your new fiancé, a European heiress, blonde, vapid, rich. Nobody looks at the trophy wife's face, Damien. They look at the diamonds on her neck." Damien stared at her. "You want to go undercover in the lion's den." "I want my life back," she said fiercely, "and I'm going to steal the keys to his kingdom right from under his nose. But we have 3 days to turn me into someone else." The next 72 hours were a blur of transformation. It wasn't just the hair dye, a platinum blonde that completely changed her complexion, or the colored contact lenses that turned her hazel eyes a deep, startling violet. It was the mannerisms. Olivia had to unlearn the flinch of the waitress. She had to unlearn the sorry that ended every sentence. She had to learn to walk like she owned the ground, to look at people with bored indifference. Damien watched her practice in the living room. She was wearing a gown he had bought, a shimmering silver thing that clung to her like liquid mercury. She walked toward him, hips swaying with an arrogant grace, her chin tilted up. "Hello, darling," she purred, her voice affected with a slight, untraceable European accent. "Fetch me a drink, would you?" Damien felt his mouth go dry. She was unrecognizable, and she was breathtaking. "You're terrifying," he murmured. "Good," Olivia said, dropping the accent and the posture instantly. "Because Richard Sterling scares the hell out of me, and if I flinch, even once, we're dead." The Sterling estate in the Hamptons was less of a house and more of a fortress disguised as a palace. Security guards with earpieces roamed the perimeter of the manicured lawns. Expensive cars lined the circular driveway. Ferraris, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces. Damien's black limousine pulled up to the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with tension. "Remember," Damien said, adjusting his cufflinks, "stick to the story. You are Katya Volkov. Your father owns shipping lanes in Greece. You met me in Monaco. You don't know anything about finance. If anyone asks about the market, you ask them if that's where they buy groceries." Olivia, now Katya, nodded. She touched the diamond choker around her neck. It concealed a tiny, high-resolution camera and a microphone. "I'm ready," she whispered. "Where is the server?" "Third floor, east wing, his private study," Damien said. "During the speeches, the security on the upper levels is lighter. I'll cause a distraction downstairs. You have a 10-minute window." The chauffeur opened the door. Flashbulbs erupted immediately. Damien stepped out, smiling that practiced billionaire smile, and reached a hand back inside. Olivia took it. When she emerged, a hush fell over the paparazzi. She was radiant. The platinum hair, the violet eyes, the silver dress. She looked like an ice queen. She clung to Damien's arm, looking bored and expensive. They moved into the ballroom. It was a sea of sharks. Olivia recognized faces she hadn't seen in 3 years. Fund managers who had mocked her, journalists who had smeared her name. She felt a wave of nausea, but she forced a laugh as Damien whispered a joke in her ear. "There he is," Damien muttered, his grip on her arm tightening. Richard Sterling stood by the ice sculpture. He was a man of 60, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with a face that looked like a benevolent grandfather. But Olivia knew the eyes. Dead. Shark-like. "Damien!" Sterling boomed, spreading his arms. "I didn't think you'd show up, after the unfortunate news about the Omnitech deal falling through." "I dodged a bullet, Richard," Damien said smoothly, shaking the older man's hand. "Someone was looking out for me." Sterling's eyes narrowed by a fraction of a millimeter. "Is that so?" He looked at Olivia. He scanned her face, dissecting her. Olivia held her breath. "He knows. He sees me." "And who is this enchanting creature?" Sterling asked, taking Olivia's hand and kissing the knuckles. "Katya," Olivia said, layering on the accent. "Katya Volkov. Damien has told me so much about you. He says you are like a father to him." Sterling smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "A father. Yes, I try to guide him. Sometimes he doesn't listen." "I am bored, Damien," Olivia said, pulling her hand away and pouting. "Get me champagne." "Of course, my love," Damien said. The ruse worked. Sterling dismissed her as a vacuous ornament and turned back to Damien to talk business. Olivia drifted away, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She mingled, moving closer to the grand staircase. Half an hour later, the lights dimmed for the keynote speech. Sterling took the stage. The crowd turned their attention to the podium. "Now," Damien whispered to her in the shadows of a pillar. "Go." Olivia slipped off her heels, holding them in one hand, and ran up the carpeted stairs. She moved like a cat. Second floor, third floor. The hallway was empty. She counted the doors. 1, 2, 3. The study door was locked. Olivia pulled a thin metallic shim from her clutch purse, a tool she had learned to use during her years of poverty when she had locked herself out of her apartment. She jimmied the lock. Click. She slipped inside and closed the door. The room smelled of cigars and mahogany. There in the corner was the terminal. Olivia rushed to it. She plugged a USB drive into the port. The screen prompted for a password. "Come on, you arrogant prick," she whispered. She didn't try to hack the password. She knew Sterling. She knew his ego. She tried the date of his biggest victory, the day he took the company public. Access denied. She tried his daughter's birthday. Access denied. She paused. She looked around the room. On the wall was a painting of a ship, the Leviathan. It was the name of the yacht he had lost in a divorce settlement, but still obsessed over. She typed, "Leviathan. Access granted." "Got you," she hissed. The files began to copy. It was massive. Terabytes of data. The progress bar crawled. 10%. 20%. Suddenly, the door handle rattled. Olivia froze. She dove under the massive oak desk, clutching the laptop. The door opened. Heavy footsteps entered. "I'm telling you, I saw a woman come up here," a guard's voice said. "Mr. Sterling is giving his speech. No one is allowed up here," another voice replied. Flashlight beams swept the room. One beam cut across the floor, inches from Olivia's hand. She pressed herself against the wood, holding her breath until her lungs burned. "Clear," the guard grunted. Must have been the maid. The door closed. Olivia exhaled, shaking. She checked the screen. Download complete. She yanked the drive, shoved it into her bra, and crept to the window. It was a 3-story drop to the garden, but there was a trellis covered in ivy. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she muttered. She climbed out the window, descending the trellis in her silver gown, the wind whipping her hair. She hit the soft grass, put her shoes back on, and smoothed her dress. She walked back into the ballroom, just as the applause for Sterling's speech ended. Damien was waiting near the bar, looking pale. When he saw her, the relief on his face was palpable. She walked up to him and kissed him on the cheek. "I have a headache, darling," she whispered against his skin. "Take me home. I have the package." Damien let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a lifetime. "Let's go." As they turned to leave, Sterling intercepted them. "Leaving so soon?" Sterling asked, blocking their path. He was smiling, but his eyes were darting between them. He sensed something. "Katya is tired," Damien said firmly. Sterling looked at Olivia. He leaned in close, invading her personal space. He sniffed. "You smell like fresh air," Sterling said softly. "And ivy." Olivia's heart stopped. "I stepped out to the terrace for a smoke," she improvised smoothly, producing a gold cigarette case from her clutch. "Your speeches are very long, Mr. Sterling." Sterling stared at her for a long, agonizing second. Then he threw his head back and laughed. "Feisty. I like her, Damien. Keep this one." He stepped aside. They walked out of the mansion into the cool night air. As soon as the limo doors closed, Olivia collapsed back against the leather seat, hyperventilating. "Did you get it?" Damien asked urgently. Olivia reached into her dress and pulled out the flash drive. She held it up, her hand trembling. "I got everything." Back at the penthouse, the atmosphere was celebratory. Damien ordered food, popped a bottle of vintage champagne, and paced around the room while Olivia uploaded the data to a secure, isolated laptop. "This is it," Damien said, grinning. "The smoking gun. We hand this to the FBI tomorrow morning, and Sterling is finished. You're free, Olivia. We'll get the lawyers to use this to overturn your conviction, too." Olivia didn't answer. She was staring at the screen. The data was decrypting, revealing the internal emails and voice memos Sterling had hidden. "Olivia?" Damien asked, stopping his pacing. "What's wrong?" Olivia's face was pale. She scrolled down, her eyes widening in horror. This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "What?" "The authorization codes," Olivia said. She pointed to a document on the screen. It was a transfer order for the $50 million that had been stolen from her pension fund 3 years ago. The crime she was framed for. "See?" Damien said, coming closer. "Sterling signed it." "No," Olivia said, her voice trembling. "Sterling initiated it, but the counter-signature, the overriding authority that bypassed the security protocols." She looked up at Damien, her eyes filling with tears of betrayal. "It's you, Damien." Damien froze. "What?" "The signature," Olivia shouted, turning the laptop toward him. "It's your private key, Caldwell Alpha 1. That's your code." Damien stared at the screen. There it was, his digital fingerprint, authorizing the theft that destroyed Olivia's life. "I didn't sign that," Damien stammered, backing away. "Olivia, I swear, I didn't even know you back then. I wasn't involved in the pension fund management." "You were on the board!" Olivia stood up, the chair crashing behind her. "You were the only one with the clearance to override the compliance officer. Sterling couldn't have done it alone. He needed a second key. He needed you." "I didn't do it!" Damien yelled. "He must have stolen my key! He must have hacked me." "Or maybe you were in on it," Olivia said, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "Maybe that's why you brought me here. Not to help me, but to see if I could figure it out. To see if I was a threat. You wanted me to find the drive so you could destroy the only copy that links you to the crime." "Olivia, stop. You're spiraling. Think about this logically." "I am thinking logically," she cried. "The billionaire protects his own skin. You used me. You used me to get the evidence from Sterling so you could burn it." She grabbed the flash drive from the laptop. "Olivia, give me the drive," Damien said, stepping forward. "Stay back." Olivia grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the desk, brandishing it like a weapon. "Don't touch me. Olivia, please, I am not your enemy. You're all the same," she spat. "Rich, careless. You break people like toys." She ran for the elevator. "Olivia!" Damien chased her, but the elevator doors were already closing. He watched her face disappear, the violet eyes full of hate. Damien stood alone in his penthouse. He looked back at the laptop screen. He looked at the signature, Caldwell Alpha 1. He sat down heavily. He knew he hadn't signed it, but the evidence was perfect. Sterling hadn't just framed Olivia. He had set a trap for Damien within the trap. If Damien ever tried to investigate the old theft, he would find his own name on the gun. It was checkmate. And now, Olivia was gone. She had the drive. If she went to the police, she wouldn't just be clearing her name. She would be handing them the evidence to put Damien in prison along with Sterling. Damien put his head in his hands. Meanwhile, Olivia ran through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan. She had wiped the makeup off, ripped out the extensions. She was Olivia Bennett again. She sat in an all-night diner in Queens, clutching the flash drive in her pocket. Her coffee had gone cold. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to march into the FBI headquarters and burn Damien Caldwell to the ground. But something nagged at her. The girl wonder part of her brain, the part that saw patterns where others saw chaos, was itching. She pulled out her phone, a burner Damien had given her, and logged into a public cloud server she used for storage. She uploaded a snippet of the code she had memorized, Caldwell Alpha 1. She looked at the metadata of the signature. "Timestamp," she whispered. "June 14th, 2021, 09:30 a.m. She frowned. She closed her eyes, searching her encyclopedic memory. June 14th, 2021. Where was Damien Caldwell on that day? She remembered reading the tabloids back then. It was the week his father died. Damien had been in a medically induced coma after a polo accident in Argentina for 3 days. He couldn't have signed it. He was unconscious in a hospital bed on a different continent. Olivia's eyes snapped open. "He stole the key," she whispered. Sterling waited until Damien was incapacitated, stole his physical security token, and used it to frame him in advance. Damien was innocent, and she had just left him alone, defenseless, while Sterling prepared the kill shot. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking news. SEC raids Caldwell Sterling Capital. CEO Damien Caldwell, accused of massive fraud. Assets frozen. Olivia looked at the TV in the corner of the diner. It showed Damien being led out of his building in handcuffs. Sterling had moved fast. He must have known they stole the data. He had triggered the contingency plan. He had tipped off the feds about the fraud he committed, pinning it all on Damien before Damien could expose him. Olivia stood up. She looked at the flash drive. She was the only person in the world who knew the truth, and she was the only one who could fix it. "Check, Mr. Sterling," she whispered. "But the game isn't over." The interrogation room at the Federal Detention Center in Lower Manhattan was a windowless box painted a color that could only be described as despair gray. The air conditioning hummed with a monotonous, headache-inducing drone, and the metal table was bolted to the floor. Damien Caldwell sat on one side of the table. His bespoke suit was rumpled, his tie removed by the marshals, his shoelaces taken. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 hours. Across from him sat Agent Miller of the FBI, a man with a face like a bulldog and a file as thick as a phone book. "We have the logs, Mr. Caldwell," Miller said, tapping a photo on the table. "We have the transfer orders signed with your private key. We have witness testimony from your partner, Richard Sterling, stating that he tried to stop you from looting the pension fund, but you threatened him." Damien let out a dry, humorless laugh. He stared at the two-way mirror, seeing his own reflection, a ghost of the titan he used to be. "Sterling is lying," Damien rasped. "He stole my key. He framed me." "And the waitress?" Miller asked, leaning forward. "Olivia Bennett, or should I say, the fugitive Serafina Vance. We have CCTV footage of you fleeing the scene with her. Did you pay her to help you scrub the servers? Is that why she ran?" Damien closed his eyes. The betrayal stung more than the handcuffs. He had opened his home to her. He had believed her story. And in the end, she was just another shark in the water, smelling blood. "I don't know where she is," Damien whispered, "and frankly, I don't care." At that exact moment, the heavy steel door buzzed and opened. But it wasn't a lawyer who walked in. It was Richard Sterling. Agent Miller stood up. "Mr. Sterling, you can't be in here. This is an active interrogation." "I have a right to speak to my partner before the arraignment," Sterling said, his voice smooth as silk. He looked at Miller with that grandfatherly authority. "Just 5 minutes, Agent. Please. I need to know if there is any way to save the company." Miller hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be watching." The agent left. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Sterling pulled out the metal chair and sat down. He didn't look sad anymore. The mask dropped. He smiled, a predatory, triumphant grin that chilled Damien to the marrow. "You look terrible, Damien," Sterling said softly. "You won't get away with this," Damien said, his voice low and dangerous. "The forensic accounting will prove the key was used from a remote location. The IP address was spoofed to look like it came from your laptop," Sterling replied, checking his watch. "And the money? It's already in accounts that bear your name in Panama. The frame is perfect, Damien. It's a masterpiece. I've been building it for 3 years." Damien lunged forward, his chains rattling, but he was bolted to the floor. "Why? I treated you like family." "Because you were weak," Sterling hissed, his face contorting. "You wanted to run an ethical hedge fund. You refused the military contracts. You refused the oil deals. You were strangling my legacy with your morality. I needed the capital, and I needed you out of the way. Killing you in Argentina would have been messy. Destroying you? That's poetic." Sterling stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m., I am holding a press conference at the Omni Hotel," Sterling said. "I will announce the dissolution of Caldwell Sterling. I will announce that I am cooperating with the authorities to recover the stolen assets. I will be the hero who cleaned up your mess. And you? You'll be the cautionary tale they teach in business school." He leaned close to Damien's ear. "And don't worry about your little waitress friend. My private security team has a bead on her. She won't make it to the police. Accidents happen in this city every day." Damien felt the blood drain from his face. "If you touch her, goodbye, Damien." Sterling knocked on the door and was let out, leaving Damien alone in the silence, screaming internally against the walls of his cage. 6 miles away, Olivia Bennett was sitting in the back of an internet cafe in Brooklyn, hidden deep within the hood of an oversized sweatshirt. She hadn't slept in 30 hours. Her eyes were red-rimmed, fueled only by caffeine and pure, unadulterated rage. On the screen in front of her, the news was playing a loop of Sterling's sorrowful statement regarding Damien's arrest. The ticker at the bottom announced the press conference. 9:00 a.m. Omni Hotel Grand Ballroom, the future of Caldwell Sterling. "He's going to bury him," Olivia muttered. "He's going to shape the narrative before the truth can even put its shoes on." She looked at the flash drive in her hand. The digital evidence was there, but it wasn't enough. If she sent it to the FBI, it would get lost in bureaucracy. Sterling had judges in his pocket. He had friends in the DOJ. By the time they analyzed the drive, Damien would be convicted in the court of public opinion, and she would be silenced by Sterling's goons. She needed a nuclear option. She needed to bypass the system entirely. She opened a terminal window on the computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, executing commands she hadn't used since her days as a quantitative analyst, mixed with tricks she had learned from the darker corners of the internet. She wasn't hacking the bank. She was hacking the venue. "Omni Hotel AV Systems," she whispered. "Managed by a third-party contractor. Default admin passwords. Please tell me you're lazy." Access granted. A grim smile touched her lips. She was in the hotel's presentation server. She could control the lights, the microphone, and most importantly, the massive LED screen behind the podium. But that wasn't enough. She needed to be there physically. She needed to look Sterling in the eye when his world crumbled. She checked her bank account on her phone. She had $400 to her name. She stood up. She went to the bathroom of the cafe and looked in the mirror. She looked like a wreck. She looked like a victim. No more hiding, she told her reflection. She walked out of the cafe and headed to the nearest department store. She didn't buy a disguise. She didn't buy a wig. She bought a suit, a sharp, white power suit that cost nearly every dollar she had. She went to a salon and demanded the cheapest cut they had. She told them to chop the long, dark hair into a sharp, angular bob. The waitress was gone. The heiress was gone. Serafina Vance was back. She walked out onto the street, the morning sun hitting her face. It was 8 a.m. She had 1 hour to get to Manhattan, sneak past the heavy security of a media frenzy, and save the man who had accused her of betrayal. She hailed a cab. "Omni Hotel," she said, "and drive like the police are chasing you." As the cab wove through traffic, Olivia pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 3 years. It was the private line of Marcus Trent, the senior anchor for Financial News Network. He was the only journalist who had ever questioned the narrative of her guilt. "Trent," the voice answered, sounding groggy. "Marcus," Olivia said. "Don't hang up. It's Serafina." There was a long silence on the line. "You have some nerve calling me. Do you know every cop in the city is looking for you?" "I'm giving you the story of the decade, Marcus," she said calmly. "Get a camera crew to the Omni Hotel ballroom. Front row. Do not move, no matter what happens." "Why?" "Sterling is just going to give a stump speech." "Sterling is going to go to prison," Olivia said, "and you're going to broadcast it live." She hung up and threw the burner phone out the window. The game was set. The pieces were moving. It was time for the Queen to take the King. The grand ballroom of the Omni Hotel was packed to capacity. The air was thick with the heat of camera lights and the murmur of hundreds of reporters. Flashbulbs popped incessantly. Richard Sterling stood at the podium, looking solemn and dignified. Behind him, the massive LED screen displayed the logo of Caldwell Sterling Capital, draped in a black ribbon graphic. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, his voice projecting strength and sadness, "it is with a heavy heart that I stand before you today. The betrayal I have suffered, that we have all suffered, at the hands of Damien Caldwell, is a wound that will take time to heal." In the front row, Marcus Trent signaled his cameraman to zoom in. "Damien was like a son to me," Sterling continued, gripping the podium. "I was blind to his greed. While I was working to build value for our pensioners, Damien was siphoning millions into offshore accounts. The evidence is irrefutable." Sterling paused for effect, wiping a non-existent tear from his eye. "Therefore, effective immediately, I am assuming full control of the firm's assets to ensure restitution is made. We will purge the corruption. We will screech." A high-pitched feedback noise ripped through the speakers, causing the entire room to wince and cover their ears. Sterling frowned, tapping the microphone. "Is there a technical issue?" The lights in the ballroom suddenly cut out, plunging the room into darkness. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Then, the massive LED screen behind Sterling flickered. The logo vanished. In its place, a video file began to play. It was grainy security footage. The timestamp in the corner read, June 14th, 2021. 9:30 a.m. The room went silent. The footage showed a hospital room in Buenos Aires. A man lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to a ventilator, his head wrapped in bandages, his leg in a cast. It was clearly Damien Caldwell. A nurse was adjusting his IV. A calendar on the wall confirmed the date. Sterling froze. He turned around, staring at the screen. His face went pale. A voice rang out from the back of the room, amplified, clear and commanding. June 14th, 2021, 9:30 in the morning. Spotlights, controlled remotely, slammed down onto the center aisle. Olivia Bennett stood there. She was wearing the white suit. Her sharp bob cut framed a face that was no longer hiding. She walked down the aisle with a stride that could shatter concrete. That is the exact minute the digital signature Caldwell Alpha 1 was used to authorize the theft of $50 million from the pension fund, Olivia declared, her voice booming through the hacked sound system. She held up the flash drive. Damien Caldwell was in a medically induced coma 3,000 miles away. He didn't sign it. The reporters jumped to their feet. Cameras swiveled from Sterling to Olivia. "Who are you?" a reporter shouted. Olivia reached the front of the room. She didn't look at the press. She looked straight at Sterling. "I am the person you framed first," she said. "I am Serafina Vance." Chaos erupted. Sterling gripped the podium, his knuckles white. "Security! Get her out of here! She's a fugitive! This is a deep fake!" Security guards rushed toward her, but Marcus Trent and his cameraman blocked their path, filming everything live. "Let her speak!" Marcus shouted. Olivia didn't flinch. She pressed a button on a small remote in her hand. The screen changed again. This time, it showed a document, a scanned log from the physical server in the Hamptons. "This is the metadata from the server I recovered from Mr. Sterling's home 2 nights ago," Olivia said, her voice steady. "It shows the manual override of the security key, and it shows who logged in to perform the override." The screen zoomed in on a username, R. Sterling, admin. "He stole Damien's key," Olivia told the crowd, turning to face them. "He waited until Damien was incapacitated. He executed the theft, framed me to cover the initial losses, and then held on to the key to frame Damien when the debts piled up again. He isn't a savior. He's a parasite." Sterling was shaking. He looked at the side exit. He started to back away. "Don't let him leave," Olivia shouted. The doors to the ballroom burst open, but it wasn't hotel security. It was the FBI. Agent Miller led the charge, but he wasn't looking at Olivia. He was looking at Sterling. "Richard Sterling!" Miller yelled, holding up a badge. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." Sterling panicked. He tried to run toward the backstage curtain, but 3 agents tackled him before he could take 2 steps. The benevolent grandfather screamed obscenities as he was dragged away in cuffs, the flashbulbs blinding him. Olivia stood alone in the center of the room. The adrenaline that had sustained her finally crashed. Her knees buckled, but she didn't hit the floor. Strong arms caught her. She looked up. It was Damien. He was still wearing his prison clothes, but the handcuffs were gone. Agent Miller must have released him the moment the digital forensics verified Olivia's data drop. "You came back," Damien whispered, holding her tight. He looked at her with an expression of awe and raw emotion. "I thought you ran." Olivia steadied herself, holding onto his arms. She looked into those icy blue eyes, which were now filled with warmth. "I couldn't leave my investment unprotected," she quipped, though her voice cracked. "It was a high-risk position." Damien laughed, a sound of pure relief. He pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her neck, ignoring the hundreds of cameras capturing the moment. "You're the smartest person in the room, Serafina," he murmured. "Olivia," she corrected him softly. "My friends call me Olivia." The restaurant was small, intimate, and impossibly exclusive. It was the grand opening of the Queen's Gambit, a bistro in the West Village. Olivia Bennett sat at table 4, the power table. But she wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a black dress that cost more than the restaurant's rent. She was reviewing a portfolio on her tablet. "The Asian markets are volatile," a voice said. Damien Caldwell sat down across from her. He looked healthier, happier. He had dissolved Caldwell Sterling and started a new firm, Vance and Caldwell, focused on ethical investing and forensic accounting. "Volatility is just opportunity in disguise," Olivia replied without looking up. Damien smiled. He reached across the table and took her hand. Are you going to work all night, partner, or can I buy you a drink? Olivia looked up. She looked at the man who had once tipped her a penny's worth of respect and who now gave her the world. I don't know, she teased. Can you afford me? Damien pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and placed it on the table. He opened it. Inside sat a ring. Not a diamond, but a rare, dark sapphire, cut in the shape of a queen chess piece. I'm leveraging everything I have, Damien said softly. Marry me, Olivia. Let's take over the world together. Olivia looked at the ring. She looked at the man. She thought about the rain, the alleyway, the chase, and the victory. She closed her tablet. That, she said, leaning in to kiss him, is the best financial advice you've ever given. And that is the incredible story of how a single question changed 2 lives forever. It just goes to show, you never know who you're talking to. That waitress pouring your coffee might just be the genius who saves your life. Karma has a funny way of balancing the books, doesn't it? If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and high-stakes revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. What would you do if you found out your boss was framing you? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.